The concept of the Akashic Records stems from ancient spiritual traditions and mystical teachings that describe a universal, energetic archive which records every soul's journey through time. This field is not limited by physical dimensions or conventional understandings of time and space. It exists beyond the material world in a plane often described as the fifth dimension, or a realm of pure consciousness. The term kasha comes from Sanskrit, meaning either or sky, and has long been associated with the subtle, invisible forces that hold the essence of existence together. The Akashic Records are thought to function like a cosmic memory bank, storing every intention, emotion, decision, and experience, whether individual, collective, or even planetary. Unlike traditional religious doctrines or sacred texts, the Akashic Records are not confined to the writings of a single culture or period. They are understood to transcend all boundaries of belief and geography. The idea is that every living being has an individual record encoded within this field, which is continuously updated as new experiences and decisions unfold. These records are not stored in a literal library, but are rather vibrations or frequencies within the quantum field of consciousness. When someone refers to reading the Akashic Records, what they are actually doing is tuning into this field through resonance, aligning their own awareness with the vibrational signature of the records they seek. What makes the Akashic Records truly extraordinary is their inclusivity and accessibility. They are not reserved for sages, monks, or mystics living in isolation. Every person, regardless of background or training, has the potential to access them. The key lies not in external qualifications, but in the alignment of inner awareness. Because the records are a vibrational field, anyone who cultivates a state of inner stillness and intention can attune to them. Many people describe the experience of accessing the Akashic Records not as receiving new information, but as remembering something they already knew deep within, a kind of soul-level recognition that bypasses the analytical mind. From a more metaphysical or quantum perspective, the Akashic Records may be likened to the idea of a holographic universe, where each part contains the whole. In this view, consciousness itself is the foundational fabric of reality, and everything we think, feel, or choose is encoded into this intelligent field. This encoding doesn't just sit dormant, it can influence the unfolding of events, manifesting as patterns, synchronicities, or recurring themes in our lives. When people access their personal Akashic Records, they often report receiving insights into the origins of emotional blocks, relationship dynamics, and life challenges. These revelations aren't necessarily predictions of the future, but rather illuminations of the energetic imprints shaping one's current path. Furthermore, the Akashic Records are not static. Because free will is a fundamental principle of existence, our choices can shift the narrative of our soul's journey. By accessing the records, individuals can become conscious participants in their own evolution, making empowered decisions with greater awareness of their spiritual context. This is one of the reasons why the Akashic Records are considered a tool for transformation. They offer not only information but also healing by helping people release limiting patterns and align with their higher purpose. It is also important to understand that the Akashic Records encompass more than just personal histories. They include the collective experiences of humanity, the energetic templates of civilizations, and even the consciousness of the Earth itself. In this sense, they function as a kind of spiritual internet, a living matrix of truth that interconnects all beings. Through intentional access, people can tune into ancestral wisdom, universal laws, or even future potentials, depending on the level of attunement and clarity they bring to the process. Despite the abstract nature of the concept, many people describe tangible effects from working with the Akashic Records. These include increased intuition, a sense of peace and purpose, and the unraveling of long-standing emotional or psychological blocks. Some practitioners even use the records for creative inspiration, business guidance, or relationship healing. This further reinforces the idea that the Akashic field is not some esoteric abstraction, but a living source of practical wisdom that can inform and enrich everyday life. In today's fast-paced and hyper-connected world, the prevailing societal narrative places immense emphasis on success, achievement, and recognition as defined by external metrics. From a young age, individuals are conditioned to seek approval from outside sources: parents, teachers, peers, institutions, and eventually, employers and social media audiences. This constant pressure to meet external expectations often leads to a gradual distancing from one's authentic self, rather than being encouraged to listen inward and develop a deep connection with personal truth, intuition, and inner wisdom. People are subtly taught to ignore these inner signals in favor of conforming to social norms, cultural roles, and predefined paths. This disconnection manifests in various ways. People frequently pursue careers, relationships, or lifestyles that are misaligned with their deeper desires or spiritual purpose simply because they are deemed respectable or desirable by societal standards. In many cultures, success is narrowly defined by material accumulation, social status, or productivity. Emotional intelligence, introspection, and spiritual growth are often undervalued or dismissed altogether. As a result, many individuals live with a persistent sense of dissatisfaction, anxiety, or emptiness, even when they appear outwardly successful. This inner conflict arises because the core self, the intuitive, spiritual, and creative essence of a person, is being neglected or suppressed in the pursuit of socially constructed ideals. The education system plays a significant role in reinforcing this pattern. From early childhood, students are taught to prioritize memorization, competition, and obedience over critical thinking, creativity, and emotional awareness. There is little room in most curricula for self-exploration or the cultivation of inner wisdom. Success is measured by grades and standardized test scores, not by how well a person understands themselves or how connected they are to their inner truth. This system produces individuals who are trained to follow rules and meet expectations, but who may lack the tools to navigate their own emotions, question societal norms, or make choices rooted in personal integrity. Technology and media have amplified the problem further. Social media platforms in particular are designed to reward external validation, likes, followers, shares, creating an environment where self-worth becomes tethered to public approval. This creates a feedback loop in which people begin curating their identities to fit what they believe others want to see. In doing so, they often suppress or hide the parts of themselves that don't align with this projected image. Over time, this can erode self-trust and make it increasingly difficult to access one's true feelings, values, or purpose. The voice of intuition becomes drowned out by the noise of comparison, judgment, and societal pressure. Moreover, cultural narratives often glorify business and constant striving, leaving little space for stillness, reflection, or spiritual inquiry. In such an environment, pausing to listen inward can feel countercultural or even irresponsible. People may feel guilty for taking time to rest, meditate, or explore their spiritual lives, especially when these activities don't yield immediate, tangible results. This bias toward doing over being further disconnects individuals from their inner landscape, where true wisdom resides. Even in the realm of personal development, the focus often remains on external transformation, changing habits, achieving goals, or optimizing productivity, rather than fostering a deeper relationship with the inner self. While such practices can be beneficial, they rarely address the root cause of disconnection, which is the failure to recognize and honor the intuitive voice within. True growth begins not with adding more to one's life, but with shedding the layers of conditioning that obscure the authentic self. This societal conditioning is not inherently malicious. It is the result of generations of systems and structures designed to maintain order, productivity, and conformity. However, it becomes problematic when it is accepted without question, and when it overrides the individual's natural capacity for inner knowing. Each person possesses a unique inner compass, a blend of intuition, conscience, and spiritual insight that is capable of guiding them toward their highest path. When society fails to nurture this inner compass, or actively discourages its use, people become more susceptible to confusion, manipulation, and spiritual stagnation. As a result, many individuals embark on a search for meaning that takes them outside of traditional systems. They may turn to spiritual practices, holistic therapies, or contemplative disciplines as a way to reconnect with their true essence. This awakening often begins with a realization that the answers they seek cannot be found in the external world, but must be discovered within. Reclaiming this inner wisdom requires courage, discernment, and often a radical reorientation of values. A shift from seeking approval to seeking truth, from performing roles to embodying authenticity, and from following authority to following inner guidance. The Akashic Records have long been associated with ancient mysticism and esoteric knowledge, leading many to believe that accessing them is reserved for advanced spiritual practitioners or mystics who have devoted years to meditation, ascetic living, or sacred rites. This perception, while historically rooted, no longer aligns with the evolving spiritual landscape of today. In modern times, more and more people are awakening to the realization that profound spiritual experiences, including access to the Akashic field, are not the exclusive domain of monks or yogis, but are accessible to anyone with sincere intent and awareness. The barrier to entry is not technique, but trust in one's own consciousness. One of the most transformative insights surrounding the Akashic Records is that they are not locked behind complex rituals or hours of disciplined meditation. While such practices may deepen a person's sensitivity, they are not prerequisites. What truly matters is the clarity of intention and the ability to become inwardly still, even if only briefly. A few minutes of dedicated, focused listening can create the vibrational resonance needed to access this timeless field. In many cases, the act of simply setting the intention to connect with the records, combined with a quiet and open state of mind, is enough to facilitate the connection. This approach removes the intimidation that often surrounds spiritual practices and makes the Akashic field accessible to anyone, regardless of background or experience. This simplicity does not undermine the depth of the experience. On the contrary, people often find that their first contact with the Akashic Records is accompanied by sudden flashes of clarity, emotional release, or a profound sense of remembering. These experiences are typically intuitive and non-linear. Instead of receiving information in a logical, analytical format, individuals report receiving impressions, feelings, symbols, or inner knowings that bypass the rational mind and speak directly to the soul. This method of reception is natural, familiar, and spontaneous. It can occur during a quiet walk, in the moments before sleep, or while listening to a particular sound or frequency designed to facilitate access. Sound, in particular, has proven to be an effective tool because it interacts directly with the vibrational nature of the Akashic field. Specific frequencies or meditative tracks can act as keys, tuning the listener's consciousness to the resonance of the records. One of the most empowering aspects of this process is the democratization of spiritual knowledge. The idea that anyone can access the Akashic Records through brief moments of stillness disrupts long-held beliefs about spiritual hierarchy and gatekeeping. It affirms that each person is their own conduit to higher wisdom, and that the divine is not separate or distant, but intimately intertwined with the self. This awareness encourages people to cultivate a deeper relationship with their own inner world and to trust the insights that arise during these moments of attunement. The knowledge received from the Akashic Records often feels deeply personal yet universally relevant, revealing patterns, truths, or insights that resonate far beyond the immediate question or situation. The practice of focused listening is not about forcing the mind into silence, but about allowing awareness to rest gently in the present moment, without judgment or expectation. This creates a receptive state in which subtle information from the records can surface. Unlike traditional forms of study that require analysis and memorization, accessing the Akashic Records involves surrender and openness. It is about receiving rather than seeking, aligning rather than striving. This distinction is crucial because it places the emphasis on being rather than doing. The less effort one exerts in trying to control the experience, the more fluid and authentic the connection becomes. Many individuals who explore the Akashic Records in this way report recurring themes of self-acceptance, unconditional love, and purpose-driven clarity. These insights often emerge not from a search for answers, but from a willingness to listen deeply. The records themselves are not bound by language, time, or ego. They exist in a space where truth is self-evident and healing is instantaneous. When a person tunes into this space, they often encounter not only information but transformation. Even a brief session can shift one's perception, dissolve a long-standing emotional block, or offer reassurance about a difficult decision. This accessibility challenges the myth that spiritual wisdom must be earned through suffering or sacrifice. It reveals that the divine intelligence of the universe is always available, waiting for the moment when we become still enough to hear it. In a world that constantly pushes people to do more, think more, and achieve more, the realization that one can gain profound insight from simply listening, just for a few minutes, can be both radical and liberating. In an era dominated by constant stimulation, perpetual motion, and an overload of information, the human mind has become cluttered with external inputs, internalized expectations, and relentless thought loops. This persistent mental activity creates a kind of inner noise that drowns out the more subtle, intuitive frequencies of consciousness. People are often so accustomed to this internal chatter that they begin to accept it as normal, rarely questioning whether a quieter, more attuned state of awareness is possible. It is in this context that the experience of connecting with the Akashic Records emerges not as something foreign or mystical, but as a deeply familiar return to an inner clarity that has always been present but seldom accessed. The Akashic Records, often described as a vibrational library or universal field of consciousness, do not speak in the same language as the thinking mind. They communicate through resonance, emotion, symbol, and direct knowing. When individuals tune into this field, they often find themselves in a state that feels less like a discovery and more like a remembering. There is a sense of off-course that arises, an intuitive recognition that the insights being received are not entirely new, but rather confirmations of truths long buried beneath the surface of daily distraction. This sense of familiarity is one of the hallmarks of an authentic connection with the records. It does not require struggle or mental effort, but a quiet presence and willingness to listen. The contrast between this experience and ordinary waking consciousness is stark. In daily life, the mind is often reactive, driven by fear, habit, or desire. It processes information at a rapid pace, evaluates constantly, and jumps between past regrets and future anxieties. In contrast, the state of awareness associated with the Akashic Records is timeless, spacious, and deeply centered in the now. It bypasses analysis and judgment, replacing them with a kind of inner stillness where truth reveals itself without force. Many describe this as a feeling of stepping outside of time, where everything slows down and becomes imbued with a quiet significance. In this state, insights arise not through logic, but through an inner unfolding, a gentle unveiling of what was always there. The naturalness of this connection can come as a surprise. People often expect profound spiritual experiences to be accompanied by dramatic visions, complex rituals, or a sense of otherworldliness. Yet the Akashic Records often present themselves in the quietest moments. In the pause between thoughts, in the stillness after a deep breath, or in the gentle rhythm of focused listening. The simplicity of this experience is what makes it feel so innate. It requires no elaborate preparation, only a shift in awareness from the external to the internal, from noise to silence. It feels like coming home to oneself, like tuning into a frequency that has always been playing in the background, but was previously drowned out. What adds to this intuitive ease is the fact that the records do not demand perfection. One does not need to be enlightened, free from doubt, or spiritually accomplished to access them. The very act of seeking truth with humility and openness is often enough to create the connection. The intuitive mind, which many people have been taught to ignore or distrust, becomes the primary channel through which this connection is experienced. As individuals learn to trust their intuition more fully, the messages and impressions from the records become clearer, richer, and more integrated into their everyday awareness. Another aspect of this natural connection is the absence of pressure. The Akashic Records do not impose agendas or strict doctrines. Instead, they reflect back what is most needed in the moment, whether it is healing, insight, clarity, or reassurance. This lack of force allows people to explore without fear of doing it wrong. It reinforces the idea that spiritual wisdom is not something to be earned but something to be remembered. The gentle familiarity of this process encourages a relaxed receptivity, which further deepens the intuitive flow. Each person experiences the records in a way that is unique to them, yet universally resonant. There is no single correct method, no formula to follow, only a willingness to be present and receptive. In many ways, the experience of connecting with the Akashic Records acts as an antidote to the overstimulated, overanalyzed state that dominates modern consciousness. It reawakens a part of the self that knows how to feel without interpreting, to perceive without dissecting, and to understand without needing to explain. This state is not unfamiliar, only forgotten. Children, for instance, often exist in this intuitive space naturally, before it is trained out of them by systems that value logic over feeling. Reclaiming this state is not about becoming someone new, but about returning to a way of knowing that was always within reach. In the age of information, knowledge has become more accessible than at any other time in human history. With a few keystrokes, anyone can access vast databases of facts, theories, opinions, and teachings from all corners of the world. However, despite this unprecedented availability of data, many people still feel lost, disconnected, or uncertain about their lives. The reason for this paradox lies in the distinction between information and understanding. While information comes from external sources and is often filtered through cultural bias, authority structures, and limited perspectives, understanding is born from within. It arises from an alignment with one's inner truth, a resonance that transcends intellect and speaks directly to the soul. The pursuit of external knowledge can be helpful, even necessary, in many areas of life. But when it comes to matters of purpose, identity, and spiritual direction, external input often becomes overwhelming or misleading. The opinions of others, the expectations of society, and the constant barrage of advice and comparison can drown out the quiet voice of the inner self. This voice, which communicates through intuition, feeling, and deep inner knowing, is the true compass that guides individuals toward meaning and authenticity. Ignoring this voice in favor of outside validation leads to confusion, dissatisfaction, and a sense of being off course in life. Accessing inner truth requires a shift in orientation, from seeking answers outside to listening deeply within. This shift is not always easy, especially in a world that values logic over intuition and appearance over essence. Most people are conditioned to measure their worth by external standards: success, wealth, beauty, approval, and achievement. These metrics may bring temporary satisfaction, but they rarely lead to lasting fulfillment. The deeper yearning that exists in the human heart, a longing for purpose, belonging, and truth, can only be satisfied through an inward journey. It is through this journey that one begins to access the Akashic Records of the self, where deeper layers of wisdom and guidance reside. When individuals begin to listen to this inner guidance, they often discover that many of the answers they sought outside were already present within them. The Akashic Records, as a field of consciousness that holds the soul's journey, provide a bridge between the external and internal realms. They do not impose truths from outside, but help to illuminate what has always been known at a deeper level. This inner knowing often comes in the form of intuitive insights, emotional clarity, or sudden realizations that feel simultaneously new and ancient. These moments of recognition serve as turning points, allowing people to reconnect with forgotten dreams, clarify their life direction, or resolve inner conflicts that have been holding them back. Rediscovering one's path through inner truth is not a linear process. It often involves unlearning, releasing inherited beliefs, outdated narratives, and societal pressures that no longer serve. This can be an uncomfortable process, as it may require challenging long-held assumptions or stepping away from familiar roles. But it is also profoundly liberating. As people shed these layers, they begin to reconnect with their original essence, their core values, passions, and desires. They start to live not from obligation or fear, but from authenticity and purpose. This alignment creates a sense of coherence between one's inner and outer world, making life feel more meaningful and whole. One of the most empowering aspects of accessing inner truth is the sense of self-trust it fosters. When people begin to rely on their own inner guidance, rather than the opinions of others, they become more confident in their decisions and more resilient in the face of uncertainty. This does not mean they reject all external knowledge, but rather that they use it in harmony with their own intuition. External information becomes a tool, not a master. It supports but does not override the inner voice. This balanced approach enables people to navigate life with both intelligence and wisdom, logic and insight, action and reflection. Living in alignment with inner truth also contributes to a greater sense of connection, not just with oneself, but with others and with the larger fabric of life. When people are grounded in who they truly are, they relate to others from a place of honesty and empathy. Their relationships become more authentic, their work more meaningful, and their choices more intentional. They no longer feel like passive participants in life, but active co-creators of their destiny. This sense of agency and alignment is at the heart of spiritual awakening. It is the realization that the answers were never outside, and that the true journey is one of remembering who you really are. The journey into the Akashic Records is not a pursuit of something distant or unattainable. It is a return to what has always existed within. In a world overwhelmed by distraction, noise, and external influence, the Akashic Records offer a quiet sanctuary where truth, clarity, and purpose reside. They are not reserved for mystics or spiritual elites, but available to anyone willing to listen deeply, even for just a few minutes. The power of this connection lies not in complex rituals, but in its simplicity, in the subtle yet profound experience of remembering rather than learning. As individuals awaken to their inner truth, through this timeless field of consciousness, they begin to shed the layers of conditioning that once obscured their path. They reconnect with the innate wisdom that feels natural and self-evident, offering guidance without force and insight without analysis. In doing so, they step into lives of greater authenticity, fulfillment, and alignment, not because they have acquired new information, but because they have rediscovered what they knew all along. The Akashic Records are not just a spiritual tool. They are a mirror reflecting the soul's deepest knowing. gently reminding each of us who we truly are.